Look at this. What a nice hot day for a little tour, huh? Today we're going to do a tour of the little neighborhood known as Brighton Beach. We're just down the boardwalk from Coney Island, but we'll talk about all that. I'm not going to harp on all this too much. Rob, how are you?
Hot.
Yeah, it's hot, baby. It's hot. I dressed down. You know, it's hard not to look like a tourist in this. I don't know if there's a cool way to wear what I'm wearing, but if there is, I ain't doing it, unfortunately. Anyways, guys, before we start, you know, check out the Patreon. It's huge help. That's how we fund these things. It's how, you know, it's going to grow. And there's some extras on there also. Like and subscribe, get all that out of the way. And we can just enjoy this calm little day here. We got a lot of history to cover, man. This is a really cool neighborhood. A lot of crazy, like, diversity. I mean, there's like a little Russia here. A little Odessa used to be known as. I'm getting ahead of myself, so don't want to do that, you know? All right. Rob, what do you think? Should we just do this?
Let's go.
I'm just rambling like a freak. Let's go. Okay, so we're gonna start here, the main attraction of Brighton Beach, which is the beach, obviously. So a little bit of background. The legend is that this was bought by the Dutch. This area was bought by the Dutch in 1645 for a blanket, a gun, and a kettle. That's all it costs to buy all this huge area here. A lot of things have changed in New York. A gun, a blanket, and a kettle won't even get you rent these days. Although I have a friend who lives in Tulsa, and that's actually what he pays in rent. Anyways, it was actually a part of a Gravesend, which is a town. This area is one of the 6 original towns of what became Brooklyn. In fact, Brooklyn was one of those original 6 towns. This is during the Dutch, by the way. In the 1660s, these 6 towns were made. But Gravesend was the one British town of those 6. Interesting. Now, this whole area became part of Brooklyn in 1894. Brooklyn then became part of New York City in 1898, the old consolidation of New York, which I've talked about a billion times. And sorry, I had to look to make sure my stuff didn't fly away. Talked about in a lot of videos, one of the most important dates in New York history. But that's all getting ahead of myself because in the mid-1700s, this area was carved out into 39 lots, okay, 39 lots. Now, up until like the 1860s, this whole area was just farms. We're way outside of the city. The first part of this area that got developed was Coney Island, just to the west of us. You can see the little stuff there in the distance, pretty cool. I already did that in the video. You can check that one out, all right? So this area kind of was developed a little later. Now the guy responsible for it, his name is William Engelman. This is the guy whose name is synonymous with Brighton Beach. This guy gets a hold of those 39 lots for $20,000. Yeah, might as well have been a kettle, a blanket, and a gun, huh? But he gets 20,000 bucks and he starts developing this area as kind of a competition to what was going down in Coney Island. He wanted it to be less vulgar. Coney Island was seen as like beneath, you know, and everything. This was done in like 1878, by the way. He builds a hotel here, the Brighton Beach Hotel. He, you know, the boardwalk, different things, eventually a racetrack. This is all getting ahead of ourselves as well. One of the important things is one of the reasons he did this, he was anti-Semitic. Yeah, I guess that's what he meant when he said vulgar in Coney Island. He wanted something that was for the non-Jews, you know, for the Gentiles, I guess. Now, it was under him that this area was named Brighton Beach after the area of England known as Brighton Beach. That's right, royalty used to summer hang out there. George IV, King George IV, ever heard of him? In fact, they have the Royal Pavilion there, this beautiful structure. Whoa. Yeah, whatever. They have the Royal Pavilion. This Brighton Beach has the Gulu Oglu Bakery, okay? So you can keep your Royal Pavilion. Anyways, this guy, Engelman, was a railroad magnate. He actually made a lot of money selling horses to the Union Army, actually. Another magnate, talked about a lot of magnates. Back in that time, there were lots of magnates. You may know them by their present-day term of corporate overlord. But back then, magnate was still a position. So this is developed. Now, we're looking also here at the boardwalk, which is actually named the Riegelman Boardwalk after Edward Riegelman, who was borough president. This stretches down all the way to Coney Island. So this is an interesting sidebar. In 1989, the Supreme Court of the United States rules unanimously that New York's method of leadership and administration is unconstitutional. Shock of the century there, because it was what was called the Board of Estimate. And the Board of Estimates was actually comprised of the different borough presidents, the mayor, all these different people who each had one vote, and it didn't correspond to the amount of people who lived in those boroughs, so it was unconstitutional, no one person, one vote type thing. Anywho, That was changed in 1999 when the city charter was overhauled, and it gave the city council more power and basically the method of government we have today. Very important moment in the New York City administration history for all you government nerds. So today, the borough president doesn't have a ton of power. He appoints the community board members, which aren't binding. He has some say in land use and things, but nothing binding as well. Basically, it's kind of more symbolic. So if you ever want to see your borough president, just pop over to the next, Jamba Juice grand opening, and maybe he'll be cutting the ribbon. He or she will be cutting the ribbon. Anyways, that's me digressing. So we have William Engelman. This is starting to be developed late 1800s, by the way. This is 1870s, 1878, Brighton Beach Hotel. Later on, more things are added, including a racetrack. This guy, William Engelman, get involved, but he has some competition, and this area kind of is competing with another area that we're going to talk about here at our next stop. Okay, so there was actually some competition with Brighton Beach, kind of spurted along a little bit. Right to the east is an area known as Manhattan Beach. Now, this could do its own video, I guess, down the road I will, but it's important in the story of Brighton Beach as well. Now, this man named Austin Corbin actually came and visited Coney Island and Brighton and thought, hey, this is a pretty amazing place. Why don't I just start a complete competitor to it? So he bought up 500 acres of basically salt marsh right nearby and started developing it. He built the Manhattan Beach Hotel, later the Oriental Hotel, and it's kind of crazy because in 1877 he opened that. Then in 1878 the Brighton Beach Hotel is open, and Engelman is like, oh crap, I got to compete with this guy. Anyways, an interesting thing is Austin Corbin was a huge pile of trash. This guy was not you could do a whole video on this guy, but just so you know, he did have the idea to start this after visiting, Engelman's area and all this. And I don't know how many of you guys go to Magic Kingdom and leave thinking, you know what, I'm going to start my own park. I guess that must be the nice thing about having that kind of money. But he starts this park. This guy was the head of the Long Island Railroad, specifically because he wanted to create a port in Montauk that competed with New York City. He wanted to bury New York City's port, because at the time it suffered from the tides. When it was high tide and low tide, it affected the navigability significantly of boats getting through the Long Island Sound and into the ports of New York. So he was just like, screw it, I'm just going to cut them off and be the middleman there and just make all that money. Eventually was a complete failure. He got the train all the way out there, and it was a failure because New York actually dredged up a lot of land, fixed it so that it wasn't a problem anymore, and he was stuck with all that land. This guy was also huge anti-Semite. I deduced the fact that he was an anti-Semite from the statement he made that he said, we do not like Jews as a class. Very subtle. He was also part of the American Society for the Suppression of Jews. That's pretty on the nose. You'd think they would have gone with a more traditional, subtle title like Country Club. But yeah, he was a real anti-Semite. Another reason why he wanted to create this place known as Manhattan Beach to offer an alternative to Coney Island. Didn't like the idea of having the riffraff here, so that was one of the things that spurred on. Today, it's a lot of little homes and things around here, and you have this is Manhattan Beach Park, a little beach as well, except you're basically facing Rockaway Peninsula over here. The Rockaway Beach, sticks out and juts out. You can see it there. So it's kind of almost like it's like you're in on the Great Lakes. You're out in Chicago, or the great beaches of Duluth. The beaches of Duluth, Rob?
Sure do.
I'm sure you do. But it's nice and calm water and all that stuff. Now, I'd already said that in the early 1900s, the hotels and all these things that Engelman and Corbin opened started to suffer because racing was made illegal, and betting and all that stuff. So the hotels and things that sprung up around them also started to suffer, as well as the trains, making day trips much more possible. This land here was actually acquired by the federal government to be a Coast Guard training station. They scrapped it, and then it was given to the city of New York in 1950, which turned it into a park in 1955. And the streets here are actually named alphabetical, going east from Amherst to Pembroke, all the way to A through P, named after places in England. Look at that, English keep popping up. The revolution's over, mate. Isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it? The revolution's over, mate. That was awful, I'm sorry. So Corbin was also involved with the Tammany Hall. He was involved with the mob. He owned a plantation in Arkansas. And you're probably thinking, wait, slavery was illegal after the 1860s, right? Yes, he still had one. He wanted to buy one and find a way to make it work. Yeah, like I said, not the best guy, but you know, he was involved here in Manhattan Beach. Today, this is a kind of little alternative to the much more crowded Coney Island, where, I mean, you can walk here from Brighton Beach, but this was important because it did spur along the growth of Brighton Beach and what is all of this area known as, I guess, Coney Island. I'll do a video on this area one day, but it became more connected. All of this became more connected, including Brighton Beach, all that stuff, here very soon with lots of different things, but we're going to talk about that at the next stop. All right, so the big question becomes, how do we get out here? We're out at the beach. It's far away from the city. We're in the beach, huh? How do you get out here? Well, this is one way. This is Ocean Parkway. Ocean Parkway was finished in 1876. It was designed by Calvert Vaux and Frederick Law Olmsted, who actually claimed to have coined the term parkway because it actually went by Prospect Park. Parkway, look at that. It reminds me of like a corny joke. People were always like, what? What's the deal? You're always driving on parkways and parking on driveways. Ah! Well, they're the ones who coined it, so you can blame them. Oh, sorry, that was my bad Jerry Seinfeld impression. They also made Eastern Parkway that went east. Ocean Parkway took you to the ocean. It's like over 5 miles. And interesting fact, 1894, this actually becomes the first bike path, dedicated bike path in the United States. How about that? How about that, Rob? Huh? That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's right. And on the first day, 10,000 bicyclists went down it. That's 10,000 people not paying attention to street lights and one-way signs. Probably a lot of pedestrians hit that day, but you know, got to give the bicyclists their paths, I guess. Anyways, you had Parkway built, Ocean Parkway built, but you also had the subways and trains eventually come. So the first was the the Brighton Beach Rapid Transit, which was actually developed and built kind of by Engelman himself. Elevated, right? Now eventually the subway gets out here in the 19-teens, once the subway's already up and running, and it gets completely plugged in. These things are, it's hard to overstate how important the subways and the trains are to these areas. Now keep in mind, Austin Corbin was head of the Long Island Railroad, so he also created a little spot right near here too, where it dumped you off. How convenient. Calvert Vaux and Frederick Law Olmsted designed Ocean Parkway to be this big sprawling boulevard. Very beautiful. It was actually inspired by the Avenue de l'Impératrice of Paris, France, and also the Unter den Linden of Berlin, Germany. Ha ha ha. I don't know how the Germans laugh, something like that. Anyways, it's a big boulevard, like over 5 miles long, pretty cool. It takes you all the way up to the park from here, but this is where it ends. So it dumps you right basically in Brighton Beach, Coney Island. You know, this brought lots of people here. Now after this, you have the Brighton Rapid Elevated Transit system built by Engelman himself, 1887. Eventually there were 3 lines coming out here. Now eventually all of these trains and things like that took away the need for the actual hotels. Remember, people were staying overnight, they were doing all this stuff. That in addition to them taking away racing. Racing was made illegal. Oh no, horse racing. You can't bet on the horses, on the ponies. Who's gonna come out here? No one wanted to come out here anymore, or stay the night anymore. They just came for the day or whatever. So the hotels take a huge hit. It starts declining a little bit. But later on in the 1920s, 1930s, you start building bigger buildings, start modernizing in that way. We'll talk about that in a bit, but it starts to change the character. It's no longer like a resort town anymore, huh? Look at that. The transit kind of had a big hand in that. So this is Ocean Parkway. Pretty cool, huh, Rob? Yeah. I'm saying the word cool too much. I gotta say something else. Pretty groovy. But yeah, Ocean Parkway takes you to the ocean. Wow, Tom, you're a freaking genius. I had no idea that's why they called it that. Yeah, no big deal. Okay. And now for one of the ultimate ironies of the neighborhood. Remember how I was telling you how the 2 major developers of this and Manhattan Beach were anti-Semites? Well, the first big major immigrant group to come here, Jews. That's what you get. Anyways, here I'm standing in front of the Brighton Beach Jewish Center, which was built in 1930. It was actually like a synagogue, a community center. They had classes, all kinds of things. And this is a pretty little building still here on Ocean Parkway. But this is a big group that kind of came from, also from Manhattan. Now, I remember I was telling you, as the neighborhood got more plugged in with trains and ways to get here, people from places like the Lower East Side started to come here because it was cheaper. Remember that. Now, the Jews started to come to New York and to the United States in the 1880s. Okay, so 1881 was a very important year. That's the year that Tsar Alexander II in Russia is assassinated. What happened? Well, he's riding around in his bulletproof carriage, as you do, and it's hit with a bomb. Whoa, one of his guards is killed, but he's okay. He stops, gets out to survey the damage, see what's going on, and then he's hit with a bomb. He's not okay that time, and he dies. Guys, let this be a lesson. If you're ever in your Hyundai Sonata and you get hit with a bomb, keep driving if you can. Come on. I think that question is on the driver's exam. Anyways, he dies. His successor is Alexander III, huge anti-Semite. And guess who gets blamed for that murder and all that stuff? The Jews. And so pogroms begin all over Eastern Europe and Russia, like this reign of terror. From the years 1881 to the 1920s, almost 3 million Jews are brought here to the United States. That's a lot of people. And a lot of them stay here in New York and they settle here in places like the Lower East Side. Now, they come out here in the 19-teens and 1920s because of what I said before. So in 1919, actually, the Brighton Beach Theater, the Yiddish Theater, is created, and it's actually the first ever Yiddish theater and summer stock created in the United States. And then from the 1920 to 1929, you had 30 modern apartment buildings go up in this area as well to accommodate all these people coming in. It was then that the area shifted from its resort and smaller homes to its bigger apartments and more densely populated area. Pretty cool, huh? But this was one of the first major immigrant groups to come here. A lot of them came, like I said, from Eastern Europe and Russia. And it still has today a lot of Jewish influence and presence. In fact, as recently as 2011, there were like 11,000 Holocaust survivors in New York City. Half of them lived here in Brighton Beach. Kind of interesting, huh? So it's still a major presence here. All that to say to Engelman and Corbin, you. And this building was used in the movie Lord of War, starring Nicolas Cage, huh? That's a little, it's very random reference, but yeah, it was written and directed by Andrew Niccol, who co-wrote Truman Show. And anyways, we can go down this path of movies, but Ocean Parkway, there's a lot of stuff shot here. Anyways. Okay, so one of the things that this neighborhood is famous for is for its presence of Russian immigrants. Yeah, that's right, Little Russia is here. So the first Russian immigrants started coming after basically the revolution and civil war. It started in 1917 and 1923. The first kind of wave come here and settle in this area. Remember I was saying that Eastern European and Russian Jews were already kind of in this area. Later on, actually in the 1970s, some of the immigration policies over in Russia, the Soviet Union, changed, allowing people to come over here. So from the year 1975 to 1980, 40,000 Russians settled in this area. That's insane. And right now I'm on Brighton Beach Avenue, which kind of runs underneath the elevated train, the subway, and you have all the storefronts here, different Russian storefronts. You have the International Foods, which actually used to be Taste of Russia, and used to have the actual little minarets, little couple of things there. They changed it because they didn't want to be really associated with Russia. This happened recently. I don't know if you guys know this, little breaking news. Russia is at war with Ukraine. Yeah. And interesting fact, this is actually used to be called Little Odessa, because this is during the Soviet Union times, because remember, all those Eastern European countries didn't exist. They were all part of the Soviet Union, and people were coming over, especially from the Black Sea, Odessa area there, what is today Ukraine. So you hear a lot of Russian here. You see a lot of the Cyrillic language written all over the place. But yeah, there's a big presence here, and still today, actually. In fact, Rob, you said you went to Tatiana, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob was saying how he went to Tatiana, and him and his wife were going to split the bill, and they refused to let him split the bill. Said that back in my country, a man pays for a woman, and told him he couldn't do it. A little taste of the old country, huh? Pretty cool. You also, not only do you have Russian today, you have all these other countries that are nearby. So you have Georgia, Uzbekistan. You have little Georgia right here, a little restaurant. You have the Tashkent supermarket. You have Azerbaijani here as well. You have all kinds of different groups that are in the periphery of Russia. And then the final wave really kind of came after the Soviet Union broke up. Remember, everything really kind of opened up then. More people came over, including from those countries I've mentioned previously. So here on Brighton Beach Avenue, you can get all your different foods, different snacks, little markets. You buy your little, what do they call, the collapsing doll thingies. Ain't cheap though. They're handmade, you know. All right. Anyways, that's pretty much it here. Let's keep it moving. Rob, what do you think?
Let's do it.
Yeah, you're still sore about having to pay for the whole bill. Look at you. All right. He's angry. Well, look at that, guys. We made it to the end. Back at the old boardwalk here. Huh? We covered a ton. Look at this. By the way, we're at the end. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, very artistic. Anyways, we covered a ton, guys. We covered the acquisition of this area from the Native Americans. We covered Ingeman. We covered Manhattan Beach and that freak Corbin. We covered the getting connected with the subways and the parkways. We covered the different groups coming in, the Jews, the Russians, the Eastern Europeans. We covered a lot. Could I cover more? Yeah, obviously. I don't have time, man. I gotta cram all this in 20 minutes, relax. Today, keep in mind that it is changing, and there are now a lot of Latin Americans, like 16% of the neighborhood is Latin American. You have more Asian as well, over 10%. So it is turning over, and that's New York, isn't it? So that being said, guys, we made it to the end. Rob, how do we do?
Pretty good.
Hey, he's far away if you can't tell. That's the price you pay for an artistic shot. Anyways, that being said, if you liked it, check out the Patreon. There's extras on there. It's how we fund these things. That's how I'm going to be able to pay Rob in something other than gun, blanket, and kettle that I've been paying him with. Also, to like and subscribe. Helps out. The algorithm builds it up, baby. I'm going to pass all the, pudding fails. Is that a thing? I don't know. Anyways, guys, I'm going to go get some baklava, hang out, Just gonna go soothe my sunburn. Thanks for watching, thanks for making it this far, and see y'all later. Sick.